This very much looks like a porn scene.
Hey, Dom.
Am I showing too much leg?
Oh,
should
no,
I,
this is just the perfect
am I giving it away, or should I do a big reveal later?
You had a moment where you weren't sure how much you were showing there, I think.
Sex positive culture.
It's my body to give.
Are threesome gifts a thing?
Taking a bra off.
I like your bed.
Horizontal.
This is Horizontal with Lila.
I'm Lila, and I'm horizontal in New York City.
I'm Dominick. I'm also horizontal with Lila in my bed.
I'm Bryan, and horizontal with Lila.
It's a Lila sandwich. Threesomes all season long. Welcome to the second threesome of season 3. Horizontal is still slow radio. It's still consensual eavesdropping. It's still us lying down, sharing secrets in your ears. But while the first 2 seasons had me lying down with only one person at a time, season 3 will often have me lying down with 2 people at a time. People who are in some kind of intimate relationship with one another. In this case, they're co-hosts and business partners. In episode 76, and the following one, 77, I lie down with Dominick Q and Bryan Stacy of the Discerning Dick. It's a monthly series focused on generating some worthy inquiry and some meaningful introspection into the forces that shape a man's sexuality, behavior, and intimate relationships. I went to the first 3 Discerning Dick events in Manhattan at the Assemblage, and it gave me an echo of the feeling of the day that I got to be a fly on the wall during a men's group meeting in Ashland, Oregon, in 2008. Undoubtedly, what I saw and heard was changed somewhat by the fact of my witnessing it. But what I heard was still a powerful window into minds and bodies that I so wanted to understand. Dominick Q is a men's group leader, an executive mentor, a speaker, and a writer. Bryan is a sexual health advocate, a testicular cancer survivor, the co-founder of the app Beam, which is designed to allow people to easily get tested for STIs and share their test results with partners. By the way, Bryan and I have been planning to co-produce an event. Look out for Test Fest 2019. Test Fest. Dom and Bryan also co-host the Man Amongst Men podcast, which they call a high-achieving man's journey to personal development. They are both men who have spent the majority of their lives highly focused on standard notions of external success. And now, they're focused on what that energy might look like and what it might do out in the world if they first focus on their inner life. They are cisgendered, straight white males trying to heighten their self-awareness in order to do better, to be constantly in the process of becoming better men without claiming to have arrived at it, and sincerely making the effort to bring other cis-straight white men along with them. I can think of many men that I would like them to talk to. Men also suffer from the indoctrination of a culture that shames us for our natural human sexuality, yet objectifies women to sell things to nearly everyone. These men aim to be a bridge between the man who doesn't know that he's swimming in water and the sex educators and personal development leaders of the world. They aim to speak directly to men who feel stuck in a lackluster sex life or mired in sexual habits that are destructive or secretive or both. Just as it is a white person's responsibility to educate themselves and the other white people around them about intersectionality, injustice, and the perniciousness of racism, so too is it a man's responsibility to educate himself and other men around him about intersectionality, injustice, and the perniciousness of sexism. I deeply, heartbreakingly believe that a lack of self-inquiry, combined with sexual repression, is a direct cause of the lion's share of violence on this planet. They are aiming for the root, and I want to do everything in my power to stand for that. Dominick and Bryan don't claim to be experts. They just aim to be willing to be educated, to be called in, to adjust their worldview, and to tell other men what they've discovered, publicly. Find Dom's work on DominickQ.com and DominickQ on Instagram, the Beam app in the App Store, and Bryan on Instagram as Talking Nut. And you can find their projects together, including the Man Amongst Men podcast, on doinnerwork.com. In this first part of our conversation, we talk about erections, the three forces that shaped their early view of sexuality, faith, family, and friends. Scrambled porn, an addiction to masturbation, what the Bible actually says about premarital sex, sexuality and spirituality, Unitarian Universalism, bargaining with God over masturbation, and how Bryan's sexual shame kept him from getting tested and led to a dual diagnosis of testicular cancer and chlamydia. Come lie down with us in Dominick's very adulting apartment in New York, New York.
This is different than how we do ours, Dom.
Just a little bit, but it could be.
Missing out, friends.
Also, I should have showered once at least in the last couple of days.
Oh, no.
Oh, man.
Really?
Not that bad, no.
Oh.
I typically do it, once a week.
Bryan does shower weekly. He's good. He's good like that.
Well,
So-
I know there's this thing in my life where I'm not totally sure if somebody has started or not started. Have we started the podcast yet?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, she has. It's
yes,
recorded. The button's red.
I always record,
Oh, got it.
but that doesn't mean that that's where it's going to start.
I feel you.
You know?
Got it.
Yeah. It's going to start when it gets, horizontal.
Got it. Well, we
No, when it gets horizontal, not when we get horizontal.
cool.
But
It's
when
more of an energetic state of being than a physical state of being, Bryan.
Can I just express all the vulnerabilities that are going through my head right now? Should
Yes.
we start with that?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
great.
Go for it.
This is super. I'm thinking, why does it feel stranger to be in bed with just my boxers on than it does to have a swimsuit on at the beach?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're in my bed right now.
Oh, that could be it. And I'm the only one in my boxers.
in the bed of your friend. I am
Yeah.
happy to join you.
Yeah.
I don't have a top on. I
Got
think
it.
it may make things more uncomfortable, but I'm happy to join you so that
So
you're not
here's
the
a
only one in
situation.
underwear.
Every once in a while, when I go get a massage, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what if I get a boner
yeah.
during the massage?
Right.
Right. And then that could potentially happen here because Dominick and I recorded something on morning routines recently. And so I've been no masturbation, no porn diet for quite a while now.
Whoa.
So you could get a spontaneous boner.
Yeah.
And there's no.
Yeah.
protective-
And then that would make things much more awkward because that doesn't happen at the beach.
What do you mean it doesn't happen at the beach? You don't get a boner at the beach?
No, I don't think I've ever had a boner at the beach.
I'm sure that that's not true for lots of people.
Really?
I'm sure that lots of people get
Dom?
erections at the beach.
Do you have a penis?
Really good question. I think I got young boners at the beach. I think it's been a long time, maybe at least 1 or 2 years since I've gotten a beach boner.
So when we did Liquid Love, obviously you're literally naked, sliding around on other people's bodies, slathered in coconut oil, and
Sounds like
erections.
A Nuru massage.
What?
Sorry, that sounds like a Nuru massage.
What's that?
Bryan could tell you.
Yeah. Neuro massage is when you go to get a massage, but they don't use their hands. They just oil up their bodies and rub them all over you.
I didn't know that's not a real thing.
It is. I didn't know it was a real thing, too. We went to a bachelor party in Montreal, and a couple of the guys went to do it and had to explain what a Neuro massage was to me.
That sounds wonderful. And that is probably very much what it's like, because we were talking about exploring with more than our hands, with our forearms, touching with our shoulders and with your buttocks. And like, how do you engage with other bodies and take the handsiness out of the equation? Because hands can feel really grabby, right? If they're reaching out. And we tried to approach another body with the back of the hand, which is a really gentle question. And the question is, what will we touch more? What does this touch want to be? And then you can kind of explore. And I gave myself full permission because I have so much surrounding touch that I never want to touch people that I feel obligated to touch. And I love to touch, but I'm so particular about who I touch and when I touch that going to something like a cuddle party is really anxiety producing for me, because I just imagine how many times I'm going to be confronted with the need to say no. And how concerned I am about other people's feelings, which is my own codependent stuff to work through, because I have to set my boundaries. But I often will absent myself from a situation like that so I don't have to set boundaries like that if I'm concerned that I'm going to hurt people's feelings. And in this situation, in the liquid love situation, we had an opening circle and we talked about whatever state we were in. We just brought whatever was going on with us in the moment into the room verbally. And I said, I want a presence that I have this tendency, and that I didn't say this there, but I danced Argentine tango a lot. And I would almost run around the room to get away from people who were coming over to ask me to dance if I didn't want to dance with them, in order to not have to say no to them and have them walk away. Really, I would strategically, I would be with it was almost military, I would be with my eyes out being like, oh, well, if I go over there, no, can't go over, gotta go over here. So I said, I have this tendency and I want to give myself full permission to move away from touch that I don't want, to refuse touch that I don't want. And because we were blindfolded, it was much easier. So if I felt a kind of touch I didn't like, pressure that didn't feel good, something that felt like it was escalating, that I didn't think the energy was there for that, I just moved away. And that was really liberating for me. But what he said about erections was, erections are beautiful. They're great. They're bound to happen. And we're just not going to do anything about them.
I like that.
They were trying to create a container, which is so rare in our society, of non-sexual nudity, and further, non-sexual nudity with physical contact.
Right.
Which I do know somebody who's running events like that called Just Naked, Adam, and Leah, his partner. But other than that, I don't really know of any other things that are like that, where you're naked, touching other people, and it's non-sexual, and it's a container that's built that way so that we can get our touch needs met without it going that way. And of course, it's bound to happen that people get aroused and there was sexual energy and tension in that room, and people express discomfort afterwards, that they really wanted it to be a cleaner space. And so we talked about how we might feel arousal and desire rising up, and not just not do anything about it, but actually actively move away from the stimulus that is arousing us and move towards something that is calm and connected, which is fascinating. Except for one person in the room, none of us were asexual. We're all sexual creatures who enjoy sexuality, but we've chosen to focus on a platonic energy in this kind of rarefied atmosphere.
Yeah.
So what I would say to that is, if your erection happens, it's beautiful and it's great. And we're not going to do anything about it. We're just going to...
we were even talking about my erection. It was such an amazing story. Wow. Lila, what? So that's a very visceral, very physical story that you just told, right? Mm-hmm. What do you feel about guys that, from an emotional standpoint, from a wanting and desire standpoint, Because I feel like oftentimes we feel, I hear this in the workplace a lot, where you have two, let's say, married and committed people, not to each other, to other spouses, and they meet somebody in the workplace and they have this feeling and this desire. But oftentimes they feel as though now I have to act on that because this is what I feel. What's your thought on that same principle that you just told us about in that physical space?
Interesting. What comes up when I think about that kind of scenario is a different principle of transmuting, because desire energy is so powerful. So you could take that tack. You could try to turn away from it, move away from it. That's maybe a more monk-like way to do it. There are also ways to indulge in the energy without fucking them in the broom closet. One way might be you take that energy, you think about them, and you create a project. You could transmute it into creative energy. You could also take that sexual energy, and if you desire to turn it towards your partner, you can maybe use the juice of a new crush, because we're always going to have desire for multiple people. I think anybody who says they've only been attracted to one person in their entire life, they're either lying or delusional. It's not possible. We're human animals. We're animals. We're going to have attraction. So if you are desiring not to go into an affair, but you want to stoke that fire because of what it does to you, because really it's not about that person. It's about what thinking about them does to you. And that gets your blood racing, and that gets you fantasizing. And what fantasies are creativity in sexual action, you know?
I love that.
So
it almost takes it from a, oh my gosh, this is how I feel and this isn't okay, to a thank you.
Yeah, thanks
this is
for
amazing.
I feel alive. I just got chills thinking about it. Like, I feel alive again, you know? Whoa. And it could be a beautiful thing to take that energy back into your partnership if that's what you want to do.
You have all the answers. This is what I love about you. My mind is always changed whenever I'm with Lila.
I don't know what to say to that.
Bestow your wisdom.
Yes,
Bestow
talk
it.
more.
Oh my
we should do a
gosh.
podcast.
Oh my gosh.
We'll just lay here with you while you just
I don't
tell
need to
us
say
stuff.
anything. I'm just going to shut up.
Listen,
This is great.
we should intro the episode because we didn't do that. I want to know, did you both learn about sex growing up? Dominick, you can start.
Okay. Bryan and I talk a lot about this. I think the first lesson I learned was that it's not okay.
From whom?
Bryan and I also talk a lot about this. There are three forces that I identified in my life where I got a lot of my lessons around sexuality, and I call them faith, family, and friends. So growing up, I went to Catholic school, kindergarten through 6th grade. Altar boy.
Uniforms?
Uniforms, the whole nine. Green pants, white shirt, plaid tie, clip on for the first couple of years, but then I learned how to tie that thing. 2nd grade. Came on. And in that environment, it was pretty cut and dry. It was premarital sex. You're going to hell. So I believed it. So I thought that.
And they actually taught that?
You know, it wasn't like an out. This is interesting.
Yes. I've been trying to get at this with people who grew up. They feel like they can't pinpoint somebody telling them that they were going to go to hell if they had premarital sex, but they feel like it was in the ether.
Yeah, that's probably the best way of saying it. Because I felt I was going to hell for a lot of different things. Because what was taught was a lot. My experience was I was taught a lot more fear than I was about the love of God. And I've recently started conversations with people who have like a deep, healthy relationship with Catholicism or Christianity, who talk about the love of it. But I would say back then, I just felt constant fear. And then this thing around sexuality was one of those places where it was just like, it's not okay. And from a very early age, like, I had a very strong sexual disposition. I remember, I've told the story at our Discerning Dick events a few times, like when I was 8 years old, I was rummaging around in like these boxes in my basement, you know, those cardboard boxes that are all like, what's in here? Buried treasures in your home. And one day I dug deep enough and I hit pay dirt, and there was a Playboy magazine in there. I knew about Playboys. I always wanted to get my hands on Playboy. I'd never been alone with one.
And you're 8.
I'm 8 years old. I'm 40 now. So this was like, you know, this was, what was it, probably the 80s or something like that?
And where did you grow up?
In Ramsey, New Jersey.
So you're in New Jersey. Your household consists of?
My mom, my dad, and my sister.
Older or younger?
My sister's 1.5 years older than me, and she's special needs.
Okay. So she wasn't letting you know anything about sexuality. She's not teaching you.
Correct.
And your parents had not given you a sex talk because sex is bad?
Yeah, so that's the other thing. Like what I learned with my family was I wasn't allowed to watch MTV because it was too provocative sexually. Anytime we'd be watching a family movie, which was like my favorite night of the week, if there was something sexually oriented on the movie, my parents would lunge across the couch and like cover my eyes and then fast forward the film, and there would be this like collective tension in the room, like this, like just that would linger for, you know, 10 minutes. And my parents didn't know any better, right? Like they hadn't been taught anything. They were just trying to protect me in their own mind. And I think they were uncomfortable also around their feelings with that going on with their kid in the room. They didn't know how to handle it. And what I learned from that was, okay, this thing that I really wanted to see play out on TV and what I'm feeling physically, not okay. So those two things were very early on, two big forces in my life telling me that sex wasn't okay.
Have you ever talked to them about that? Have you ever said, hey, the fact that you lunged across the couch and covered my eyes was kind of messed up?
Yeah, actually just recently, because I did an interview on NPR about the Discerning Dick event that we did, and we did this 45-minute interview on NPR, and they distilled it down to 8 minutes. And the very first soundbite was, my parents would lunge across the couch and cover my eyes. And my parents were tuned into this thing live. You know what I mean? And it was like the first thing they heard. I'm like, oh, fuck. You know, out of everything I said. And of course, they didn't leave like the rest of the context in about how beautiful my parents are and all that stuff. It was just that. And so it did stimulate a conversation. It wasn't a deep one. It was fairly quick. And they apologized. You know, they felt bad. They didn't know how to handle that. They were never taught how to. And I think they were uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And they said, we're sorry if that had an effect on how you were brought up and how you had to feel secretive or shameful about your feelings.
It's beautiful that they recognized that and were able to say, hey, we did the best we could and we're sorry. We're sorry it wasn't better for you.
Yeah. They're fantastic with that stuff. And I give them a lot of credit because their friends don't get any of this conversation at all. Like, why would you have these conversations openly? And my parents have been fantastic. Like, they don't tell me any of it. I know that they're getting it from all of their friends. Like, why is your son talking about this stuff? And should he be talking about this stuff? And my parents are like, they're just like armor. You know what I mean? They'll deal with it, but they will never let me know about it because they're protecting in that sense.
My mom doesn't want to hear about it. She knows at this point that I have a podcast about sexuality, and she's like, I don't really need to hear about that right now. If I ever bring it, but she wants to know what's going on in my life. And I'm like, okay, well, this is good 75% of my life here is focused on this realm, not just sexuality, but the broad umbrella of intimacy. And I won't tell you about anything you don't want to know about, of course, but it's a wedge for certain. I know that you don't want to hear about the most important thing to me. The thing that I feel is fulfilling my purpose or a part of fulfilling my purpose on the planet.
How's it feel like for you?
I have so many challenges with her that it's just, that's not the biggest one.
It's all wrapped up into some bigger stuff.
Yeah, it's all wrapped up into a kind of fraught relationship. So. But your parents, so from the lunging across the couch time of your life, then you find this Playboy.
Found the Playboy. My entire body went into like hyperactive electricity state. Like I never felt anything like that before. And you know, when that trifold like that glorious trifold just like falls out third by third, and then you're just holding it there. I don't quite remember how long I stood there and stared, but it was like I'd never seen a naked woman.
Right.
And it was glorious. Like, she was glorious.
And what did she look like? What was the centerfold?
I just remember like brunette, white woman, beautiful body, like big breasts, beautiful body. And I guess that was it. You know, like as an 8-year-old, I didn't know how much else to take in. If I were to describe it further, I'd probably just be like making it up right now in my adult mind. But those were the things that I saw. And from that point on, I was kind of just like hooked on how that made me feel. And so anytime like I could leave my house and go to my friend's place, my best friend Mike, I always go to his house, and you could guaranteed get like the rated R movies at his place. Mm-hmm. So I would make sure we'd watch any rated R movie that had tits in it. Like, that was the thing.
Everybody seems to have that one friend that they went to their house to watch the saucy things.
It was always his house.
The one parent that didn't keep things on lockdown.
The one parent that didn't really care that much, yeah.
Or encourage the conversation.
Oh, yeah. It was basically any, like, Police Academy movie, First and 10, which is a TV series on HBO. Any of those were, like, guaranteed. Or almost any comedy PG movie in the 80s had breasts. Teen Wolf. Just one of the guys.
Bare breasts?
Bare breasts. You could,
In
back
Teen
in the
Wolf?
day, of course.
Really?
It wasn't Boof. It was Tina the blonde. Don't forget it, man.
Did you ever try scrambled porn at home since you didn't have the good channels?
Of course. Like when, what was it? Spice Channel?
What do you mean
Yes,
scrambled?
Spice Channel.
As in, you didn't actually get the channel, but you tried to tune the antenna in
Yeah.
to see a little bit?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Not
it
the
was all
antenna.
like staticky? No.
You had an antenna?
Well, it wasn't an antenna, no. It was just.
I just sat there and waited for
connected.
the
It looked
the
like
static.
an antenna. Yeah, static.
Yeah. You waited for the static to like actually for a nanosecond it would come in and be like, there's a breath.
There's a boob.
Oh my God.
It turns out it was a kneecap.
She had a dirty kneecap. It looked
That's
like
okay. It's enough. At that point, it was so desperate. It's enough. A kneecap is enough.
Like, you could do that. You could make that work.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Is that a boob? It's an elbow. Stop it.
Victoria's Secret catalogs were fantastic.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to go get the mail today. Why is my son so keen to get the mail every day?
Where did you go with those Victoria's Secret?
Bathroom.
But yeah.
It's always a bathroom.
Same.
Sitting on the toilet?
Yeah.
Closed.
No, I would take baths. Because that was the one way I knew I wouldn't be interrupted.
Ah.
Because if I was under the guise of going to the bathroom, then the clock is ticking. Bathtub got me 35, 40 minutes.
Doesn't it make it harder to masturbate? Is it easy to masturbate in water?
I would
realize-
always get it done before the water filled up over my junk.
Yeah, masturbating underwater is not great.
Yeah, I would think it would not, friction-wise, would not be not be so great.
I had it down to a science.
When did you even figure out that you could masturbate?
Oh, God, this is another story. Brian's heard this one 1,000 times. So, like, my parents were...
I love the way you tell stories, though. This is great.
Do you want to hear it?
It's so juicy every time.
I was like 13 years old, and so it was late bloomer, at least compared to the men that we've spoken to, right? A lot of guys were like 11, 12 years old. My parents one day left me at home with a rated R movie, which never happened, and it was the classic White Men Can't Jump with Woody Harrelson, Wesley Snipes, and God bless her, Rosie Perez. And so I came home after school one day. I'm like, it's sitting on top of the VCR. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is amazing, because I knew what went down. So there's this scene where like Woody Harrelson comes home and Rosie Perez jumps on him. He takes her top off, and all they're doing is just kissing, and you see her breasts, and it's passionate, and it goes on for like 10 seconds. So I sit down on the couch. I got the remote. I press play. I watch the 10 seconds. I rewind it, press play, and I got its like boner that's now sticking through my blue sweatpants, which I've had boners before. This time, for the first time, I decide to like kind of rub it. I'm like, that feels good. I'm using the VCR remote, rubbing myself through the pants. Rewind, play, rewind, play, rewind, play. And then I don't know what happened, but it got like the friction got more intense. My rubbing got more intense. And then all of a sudden I felt this shift where all of the energy in my body, it was coming from like all of my extremities with the force of like a fucking like fire truck barreling down 14th Street, all surging through this one concentrated part of my body, my crotch. And then I just remember blacking out, seeing black, and
Whoa.
then boom, boom, boom. It was like these supernovas crashing through my mind. And when I came to, I remember like collapsing kind of back into the couch. And I'm like, what the fuck was that? And I look at my pants, my blue sweatpants. There's like a wet spot the size of a dinner plate. And I panicked. I was like, what the fuck just happened?
Wow.
And then I was like, but I want more of that. So I kept like rubbing, and like the feeling went away. It wasn't there anymore. So I quickly like rewound the videotape, put it back in its thing, ran upstairs, tossed my sweatpants behind my bed. And then I went into the bathtub, and then I was back at it again. And like I did that like 3 or 4 more times that night.
Has it ever been that good again from that first time?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Of course.
The supernovas?
Yes.
And
Yes.
do you think that part of the compulsion is like trying to get back to that supernova feeling?
No, it wasn't like, so the compulsion was when I found out that masturbation could be used for not just like these amazing feelings. The way I likened it at the time was like, oh, I just discovered I have access to heroin at any time I want, and it dangles between my legs. I just pull on this crank, and then it gives me that high. And then when I realized it could also work as a numbing mechanism for any like stress or, you know, teenage angst, because I switched schools from Catholic school to private school. Catholic school to public school around that same time. And I wasn't like the big fish in the small pond anymore. I didn't really know my identity. I wasn't the best athlete. I wasn't the smartest kid in the class. So like I felt really, really anxious and lost. And I would come home upset and stressed out. And so masturbation was like the way that I numbed all of that out.
You use the word numbing, and I've heard you use that word before, and that seems to put a negative pall on it, like you are using it as a drug, and maybe that is what you mean. But is there room for an interpretation that's you were using it as a coping mechanism, and that it was not unhealthy for you to do so?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it was a coping mechanism because I didn't have, like, I was a really sensitive kid, and like I didn't have any tools on how to navigate that. Like if I got wound up or worked up, yeah, like things were either amazing or they were nuclear. There was like not much space in between, and I didn't have things like meditation or breath work as a 13-year-old growing up in the 80s or 90s. It just wasn't taught to me. I didn't know how to talk about my feelings or express my emotions, so I just went inward, and inward wasn't much better. So this like masturbation helped me to forget all of that. It gave me like an amazing replacement feeling. And then when it was over, the things that used to worry me or bother me just didn't seem to have as much force behind it anymore.
Mm-hmm. I just kind of want to put a pin in that idea of numbness versus coping mechanism or tool. Maybe you did use it to an unhealthy degree, but I wonder how much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things I talk about this pretty openly, is like it would get to the stage of 4 to 5 times a day, you know, and when your dick is not used to that kind of friction, like I tore myself up back then. And like it would be like having, if like you tripped on pavement and you scabbed your knee, you know what I mean? Like I literally had scabs.
Chafing.
Yeah. Scabs. Like where I'd be walking down the hallway at school, it would hurt. I'd be running the base pass in baseball, it would hurt.
Whoa.
And I would still continue to do, I would find any real estate that was unencumbered and like just work that area just so that I could continue feeling what I was feeling.
Right. And so that one definition of addiction that I've heard is when it starts to interfere with other spheres of your life, when it starts to keep you from things that you care about or have you disregard other things.
And also like say, like wanting to stop and then not, you know, like making a promise, okay, I'll cut it back or I'll curtail, and then breaking those promises to yourself. Like that was, and what it really boiled down to, Lila, is like the behavior, the desire to feel the feeling, like to explore myself sexually, is natural. but I didn't know that. I thought it was wrong. I thought it was bad. And then I stumbled upon how it could be used to help me solve another problem in my life. And then that felt bad. It felt weird. And also at that age, my friends, like the people in the class that I went to, masturbation was, you were considered a weirdo, a pervert if you did it. So like everywhere I turned,
Oh, really?
Yeah. Bryan had a totally different, like we talked about this, like it was cool. Like if you were one of the first people to masturbate, but in our school, you were a hairy palmed freak for beating off.
How did people even find out? Was it just people being scarlet lettered or falsely accused of? Okay.
Yeah. Like that kid. And, you know what I mean? Like
Look at that
did
kid.
It reminds me of
Look at Dominick. He's a masturbator.
He's a cake sniffer, dirty cake sniffer.
Yeah.
Do you know?
It's a cake sniffer.
That's exactly.
Sounds good,
That's
actually.
exactly the point. It's from the oh gosh, what is it? It's a children's TV show with Neil Patrick Harris. There's a character in it, and she's like, you dirty cake sniffers, and the orphans, the Baudelaires, they're like, what's a cake sniffer?
Yeah.
And she's a cake sniffer, the girl herself.
Yeah.
And you see later in a scene that she goes and she sticks her nose in a cake, and then she gets away with it. It's like people accusing people of what they do.
Yeah.
That
I
they
got
think
you.
is shameful.
Totally.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I found out from these guys who were making fun, like 3 months later, they were like, oh, yeah, I do it every day.
Oh, my God.
But at first, it was like, so everywhere I turned, it was like, whatever you're feeling is not cool. And when I think about the faith, my family, my friends, that encompassed everywhere.
Right. Bryan? What did you learn about sex growing up?
Well, let's start with masturbation since we're there.
Okay.
I don't know exactly when I started, but I do know
I don't either, actually.
that it was. I was hoping you had all the answers. So, when did I start
Claim
masturbating?
to have all of them.
But here's what I do know.
Okay.
I do know that it was at a very young age because I remember reaching my first orgasm, which I didn't know what it was, but I didn't ejaculate. Nothing came out.
I was about to say orgasm with ejaculation or without.
Right. And so I was so young, and I remember, I don't know why, I don't know the why behind this, but I remember feeling a lot of terror because the hallway that my bedroom was on, my parents' bedroom was also on. And even to this day, I'm very attuned to steps in the hallway.
Wow.
Because the parent could come in at any point in time.
Yeah.
So I had to be ready to pull the covers or move quickly.
What made you feel that you had to hide it, though?
I don't know. I don't know where that fear originally came from. I do remember some conversations after that with my dad. For example, one time I was masturbating and I fell asleep mid-masturbation. And he came in to check on me. And he was nice enough not to wake me up. But the next day, he said, hey, Bryan, I gotta talk to you. I go, oh, what? He's like, listen. He's like, this is something that people do, and it's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
But if you could just, if your mom walks in on you while you fall asleep and you're doing that, like it's going to be kind of awkward. And I said,
Oh,
okay.
so mom's not supposed to see this.
Yeah, so that was part of it. But there was
And what's the landscape of your family, and where are you growing up?
I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Chicago. And I've got my mom and dad. They're together. We're Christian. Grew up with a Christian family. As a matter of fact, my grandfather's he was a pastor of a church.
Wow.
And then I have two younger sisters. One is 2 years younger than me, and then one is 10 years younger than me.
Okay.
So I was big brother in the house.
Wow, you two are I'm really glad that you do the Discerning Dick, because you're really well poised to speak to so many men across America who were raised in a faith that shamed people for their sexualities. Yeah. So for you two to be having this conversation is really important. And I want to honor you for that.
Thank you, Lila. And Bryan, what's interesting is that Bryan is a practicing Christian and I'm not. I basically stepped away from Catholicism when I got to college and could make my own choices. Mm-hmm. And I had a real problem with religion for a long time. And
Me too.
Did you?
Yeah.
And then when I was in the 12-step program for sex addiction between 2013 and 2017, one of the things that really represented a major shift in my life was connecting to spirituality. Spirituality as I defined it, and it became deeper. Buddhism was the first place I went. But over the past year and a half or so, I've really been working on forgiveness of religion. And I've been bringing people closer to me who are deeply religious because I no longer wanted to harbor animosity There was only one area in my life where I really just felt like an anger towards, and it didn't feel good.
Yeah.
So that's another thing is like Bryan and I talk a lot about how do you integrate healthy sexuality and also faith in a place where there seems to be such rigid lines and lack of acceptance. But Bryan's been doing a really interesting job of asking different kinds of questions than I've heard people ask.
Yeah, that's a huge pain point for me. I mean, I felt as though growing up and going to church that I was doing, for the most part, quote, right. Except for these couple things. One called sex. I was like, well, I'm not going to get rid of that anytime soon because that's pretty amazing. But I would feel ashamed every time I walked into church thinking about that. So that was the one major issue I had with the teachings. The other major issue I had and have is I don't like the idea of this being the only way. That I've got a lot of friends that aren't Christian, and the idea that that they're going to go to hell then, it just does not seem okay to me. So then I start to ask myself, well, okay, does that mean that if you don't believe everything, then it completely dissolves the whole story, everything. So what I look at it when it comes to Christianity is I think that there's a lot of really amazing love-based lessons and values and learnings and stories there.
Yeah.
And that's what I really attract to. And the work that Dominick's talking about is I've done some recent research on what does the Bible actually say? What does it really say about premarital sex? And I've looked at every single verse across the Bible, and there's about a little over 30 of them.
Whoa.
Across both the Old Testament, right, the Torah, and the New Testament. And there's not a single one that says you cannot have premarital sex.
Really?
Really. And so there's some interpretations. There's many current interpretations of it. It does say things as abstain from sexual immorality, but it never defines what sexual immorality is. And so what is that? Like the church would like to have you say that that's premarital sex and that anything outside of that isn't moral, but it doesn't say that. And as a matter of fact, somebody like King Solomon, who is apparently the most wise man on earth ever, he's Old Testament. He's got some beautiful verses in Song of Solomon that talk about intimacy and about eroticism. He had 700 wives. Right, so the Bible also says don't have sex outside of marriage. So I'm just saying there are some things here that I feel as though the modern church has created that's outside of what it actually says. And so it's all up for interpretation, and I feel very comfortable in that let's connect in really beautiful ways.
Yeah, my sense is that those things were written down by people, and the rules were made up by people. And I also had a hatred and aversion towards religion from my childhood. My dad almost became a Catholic priest. My dad's a Catholic. My mom is a non-practicing Jew.
Okay.
And they gave me a choice, Hebrew school or Catholic school. I chose neither. They didn't make me go. And I went to midnight mass on Christmas Eve, and I went to Easter Sunday with my parents because that's what was required of me. And I remember being like, this sucks. I don't like how this feels. And
So you were in the feeling part of it. Like you could actually feel that it didn't feel right for you.
I was bored. It was stinky.
What do you mean it was stinky?
The incense.
Oh, okay.
The thing that they wave back and forth. They were wearing weird costumes that seemed very strange and outdated. Why is this person more holy than other people? I don't understand. The language is archaic. It's not speaking to me and this time that we're in. It's just weird. It just feels wrong. Then my parents got divorced when I was 12. I moved to Florida with my mother, and I went to a new school, and I had trouble making friends. It was an all-white community. It was very, very different, very culture shocking for me to be in an all-white community. And I wound up falling in with these Baptist kids because they were the only kids who were...
I've only heard that term before. I'm sorry to cut you off. But they fell in with gang members and drug dealers.
Yeah.
I've never heard
Baptist
I fell in with
clan.
Baptist
I fell in with these
kids.
Baptist kids. That is what it felt like.
Okay.
That is what it felt like because they were nice to me. As it turned out, they didn't actually like me. They weren't being nice to me. They were trying to rack up saveds. They were trying to get kids saved.
Yeah.
And then I remember I went to the youth group, which was very Jesus freak kind of thing with a charismatic young pastor, and they were like, if you want to be saved, raise your hand. And I was like, okay. And everybody's supposed to have their eyes closed, and I raised my hand, and then people came up and congratulated me afterwards, and I was like, why?
What just happened?
What?
Mm-hmm.
And you're lying, and you didn't close your eyes, and now I feel this is very uncomfortable. And I went to a summer camp with them, and I was just largely ignored, and I felt that they were cruel kids, and I couldn't reconcile the teachings of Jesus with these kids who are so fucking cruel and not open and not generous and not loving and not trying to make themselves in that mold of being love. And so I developed this huge aversion to Christianity and Catholicism, more Christianity than Catholicism, because I felt like everybody was just a fucking hypocrite. And I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And if you said that you were a Christian, I would be totally turned off, and I wouldn't want to be your friend.
Yep.
And I would move away from you.
Yep.
And then when I was 15, my mom said, I want to go try out this Unitarian Universalist church. And I was like, great, have fun. and she said, you're coming with me. And I was like, no, I'm not. And she's like, you're going. And I was like, no, I'm not. She's like, you're going. I was like, fine. And we went to this church, and immediately when we walked in, it was the UU Church of St. Pete. And we walked in, and immediately I could feel something different. It was set up like a church. There were pews. There was an altar at the front and a podium for the minister. But there were these 3 very tall, arched windows, and they weren't stained glass. They were windows to the outside, and you could see trees behind them. And I was like, that feels different. And everything about it felt different. Everything about it was based around the ideas of acceptance, the idea that we all have the right to define our own spiritual path, the idea that we don't have to believe the same thing to come together in fellowship, and that a respect for the interconnected web of all existence of which we are a part was the basis of that fellowship. And I absolutely fell in love with that because there was no dogma. There were no rules except what felt like deeply common human sense. And then I started to open myself to spirituality. And I became really deeply involved in the youth group. And I went to college. I kind of fell out of going regularly. They call it mind the gap because there's always a gap, right? Kids go to college and they stop coming to church, and they don't come back until they have kids usually. There's this gap.
Yeah.
I didn't go regularly. I do go back once in a while. I still have that same affinity for it, that same feeling, and I imagine that someday I might.
What is the feeling when you go now? Like what
minister.
What is it that makes you go? Did you say you'll be a minister?
I feel that someday, maybe in my 60s or 70s, I might become a UU minister.
Love it.
Wow.
In my later life. What's the feeling that has me go now when I go? I think it's a longing to be moved by humanity and our collective longing for something that is beyond what we can see.
That feels pretty universal.
So that changed and opened and softened me a bit. And then I went to Codependence Anonymous for a year.
Okay.
About 2 years ago or a year ago. Yeah, 2 years ago, I think. And the notion that nobody gets to dictate what our concept of a higher power is was incredibly powerful for me.
Liberating.
Yes. Being able to use my own creativity to connect with something beyond myself that is also myself. And that felt really incredible. And so when I hear you talk about not being able to reconcile, like I could never reconcile that that behavior with Christianity. And I imagine, should there be a higher power, an entity, that higher power would not want us to not have pleasure. That higher power would want us to celebrate our humanity in all the ways that we can celebrate it. And one of those ways is sexuality. So it's really hard for me to understand these kind of...
totally. And to follow that thread, it seems interesting that we were made intentionally. We were made in a way that at the age of 10, when I saw a woman walking down the street and I saw her boobs just bouncing, I would get a boner.
That biologically our bodies
happens.
Are formed in such a way that this happens.
Right. And even at that age, this is happening to me. And I'm not saying that it's incumbent that I have to go use it. We already talked about that.
Right.
But it is happening. And I think to deny that and to say, like, hey, this isn't an okay thing to either talk about isn't enough. You know, the lessons that I got from a Christian household was, this is really simple, Bryan. Like, just don't have sex until you're married. That's it. And I'm like, yeah, but what about the boner? Can we talk about the rest of it?
It's also so strange, right? Because you're saying, okay, it's not okay, not okay, not okay, not okay, shameful, 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 shameful. Oh, you're married. Oh, now it's great. Now you need to feel great about it. You need to make your partner feel great about it. And it's going to be great now because it's okay. Now it's okay. Married, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. What? How are you going to reconcile that?
Yeah. It's a real tough one. I tried. At the age of 10, I tried to reconcile it. I went on a fishing trip with my dad and a few other of his friends and their sons. And they were all talking about these giant fish that they caught. But my dad and I didn't catch a giant fish. And on the last day, we had about 2 hours left of fishing before we had to go home. And so I made a deal with God. And I said, look, God, I know why we haven't caught any fish. It's because I masturbate.
Oh.
This is in my head.
Oh.
So here's the deal. I'll stop masturbating if you allow us to catch a big fish. That's the deal. And at that time, I wasn't a very good negotiator because I told God I wouldn't masturbate the rest of my life. I kid you not. About 10 minutes later, all of a sudden my pole goes... No! I'm so excited. I thought it wasn't a fish. I thought I caught it like on a log at the bottom of the lake because it felt so big. And it was such an amazing like father-son moment where I'm bringing the fish up and he gets the net. He's like, I got the net! And we finally caught this giant fish that we go back and brag to all of our friends about. And we took a picture. This was before digital, so it was like, get the analog photo. Click, 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 click. And we let the fish go back into the lake. And we're high-fiving. My dad's now driving back with his hat backwards on the way into the cabin. And we're so excited. And about halfway into the cabin, I was like, oh no. No more masturbating.
Oh, fuck.
And that lasted about 3 weeks. Which was quite frankly pretty good at that point in time in my life. Yeah, but I can remember, I tell the story because I can remember like all the shame associated with like, well, this is why we're not catching fish is because I masturbate and that's a bad thing. And I can't remember a single time where anybody told me that like, don't masturbate, it's bad for you. But it was certainly felt to the point where I would make a promise like that.
Wow.
I think the biggest issue is just like, at least speaking from the boys' perspective, is like having to go underground with all of this. So,
yes,
Bryan, you're like 10 years old, you see the boobs bouncing, walking down the street, you get this boner that you have like no control. It just happens, and it's crazy what your body will do, right? It's crazy what my body did back then. It was like and I use this analogy all the time. It feels like a shook up Coke bottle inside of you, everywhere, and it's like and then the guidance we're given is like, don't use that until you're married. And it's like, well, what do I do with all of this energy?
What do I do with this Coke bottle?
Yeah, that happens 17,000 times a day, every day. And where do I go with that?
And oh, by the way, I want more.
Yeah, I want
right?
more.
Like I'm not going to see like one of my primary objectives at that age was go find something with a nude woman. I mean, we talked about the scrambled porn and I mean, at that point in my life, I was still 12 years old. I mean, stealing magazines because it's the only place I could get it.
Yeah.
And felt really cool about doing that because I showed it to my friends and I was that guy.
Oh, you were the one. You were the purveyor of porn.
I was that one.
Yeah, he was.
So now all of a sudden I'm starting to learn that there's power. There's power in finding the female flesh.
In the black market.
And then you got cool kid credit because you said in your group, or you said that in his group, that was... You exactly got cred for that.
Oh, yeah.
I noticed that you both use the word boner. Why do you think you use that instead of the word erection?
Because we're still too...
We're like 12 years old, kind of.
Yeah, we're still on the journey of getting to mature.
Well, okay, we're talking... The reason why we're saying boner is because we're reflecting upon our younger years.
Okay.
Like when I'm 10 years old, I don't have an erection. I got a boner.
That's true.
I got a woody.
Do you say erection now?
Sometimes. It seems kind of clinical.
But boner seems like you are uncomfortable still. Boner seems like you're trying to poke fun in such a way that's to deflect some... I mean, you called your series the Discerning Dick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which was a name given to me by my female mentor in New Zealand.
Tell me about that.
Oh my God, my mentor in New Zealand, she's just like the most irreverent, wicked smart, hilarious. She's probably the best speaker in all of New Zealand, and she's coming to the United States in a few months. We're gonna do like a tour together. Actually, we're gonna be doing, Bryan, we gotta talk about this. Like we should do a Discerning Dick event with her because she's gonna be fantastic.
What's her name?
Her name is Lisa O'Neill, and she's like, yeah, like the work that you're doing on yourself and with other men, like it's discerning. You're teaching them discernment. Oh my God, you should call it the Discerning Dick. And I was like, oh, that's good. And so therein was the name.
What I want to know is how, from this place of it's shameful, it's bad, I shouldn't be doing it, it's furtive, it's underground, it's in the back room. What is the journey that leads you both to come together and then speak out about your dicks?
Well, let me talk first about some of the path that is in between 10-year-old Bryan promising to not masturbate and now. Because what I found in high school, I played a lot of sports, and so I wasn't a party guy. I didn't drink. But when I went to college, I did. And in high school, I only had sex with one person. So in college, what I found was this thing called alcohol that was able to get me out of my head and out of me worrying about all these rules about sex and sexuality that were in me. And so I didn't consciously do this. I didn't knowingly do this. But what I did know is that when I drank, I could go talk to women. If I drank enough, we could go have sex and I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't be anxious about it. And so I went through years and years and years, I'm talking decades of my life, where I used alcohol as a way to suppress a lot of these feelings. So what I was doing is I was having sex, but I wasn't talking about it. I certainly wouldn't talk about it with a partner, either before, during, or after. And fast forward that to now that when I turned 30 years old, I was doing the same thing. So if I was unconscious through alcohol, I could do it. But anything premeditated, that felt bad and wrong. And so I had a lot of this anxiety built up. And where that went was I never got tested for STDs. And then when I started feeling pain down in the groin region, I didn't do anything about it. And finally, after 3 months of feeling these symptoms, I went in and I was diagnosed with both testicular cancer and chlamydia at the same time. And so my anxiety that surrounded, and I'm happy to go back into some of that story, but my anxiety prevented me from connecting with others and talking to them about our collective sexual experience, talking to doctors and taking care of my own health. And that could have killed me. Mm-hmm. And so why I talk about this today is because I know that this isn't just a Bryan problem. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people about their own sexual health and situations and beliefs. And so when Dominick said that he was putting on this thing called Discerning Dick, I go, great, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, let me tell my story. Or you actually asked me if I could tell my story.
Yeah, because you were already well down the road with your sexual health company at that point, too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a perfect alignment.
With Beam.
Right.
In high school, you said you had sex with one person. Mm-hmm. How did you reconcile that with, did you say it's okay because I'm going to marry her and it's just one person? Or was there a way that you were able to reconcile that in your brain with what you had been indoctrinated with?
There was a lot of... I don't know if I thought about it that way at the time. Subconsciously, I was probably thought I would be with this person forever, so maybe it was okay. But more than that, what I do remember is like, I just really wanted to do it.
Right.
It was more that.
The drive was...
So it was almost like, yeah, right. The want was higher than the risk at that point.
Right.
Yeah. And I was at an event, I think it was a podcast recording of some sort, a panel recording. and somebody was describing their experience at a sex party, and I've never been to a sex party, and so
I can invite you to one, but go ahead.
Thank you. The question was being asked about what kind of alcohol and drugs and everything were being served there, and somebody said, like, "Oh no, there's no alcohol, there's no drugs," and I immediately went into my head. I'm like, "Oh my God, that would be so uncomfortable for me." And then I said, "Well, wait, why is that so uncomfortable for me? Why am I uncomfortable potentially being naked, like, in front of a multitude of people? Like, what's up with that? Without alcohol?" And I realized, so I started to ask myself a question. I said, when's the last time I had sex with somebody for the first time, completely sober?
The second half of my conversation with Dominick and Bryan, in which I tell the story of a massive extended body orgasm, will be released next week as episode 77 and is available exclusively to patrons of the Horizontal Arts. Patreon is the love child of crowdfunding and a subscription service. By becoming my patron, you can gain access to all the part 2s, plus a monthly video full of intimacy tips and a love poem. Through patreon.com/horizontal with Lila. That's spelled patreon.com/horizontal with Lila. If you become a patron before the end of April, I will send you a handwritten thank you love note and either a horizontal magnet or a sticker in the actual mail. In just about a week, on April 27th, the Joy List and I are hosting The Sleepover, which is not a sex party, but an overnight opportunity to indulge in copious playfulness, connection, and joy. There shall be pajamas, snacks, personal development quizzes, intimacy games, of course, my favorite, a sound bath meditation, sensation play with car buffers and pinwheels and other fun toys, a giant teddy bear named Tiny, and some surprises. You can find the ticket link for the sleepover on horizontalwithlila.com and through my Instagram bio. And with this secret code, you can get 20% off your ticket. The code is horizontality in all caps. Message me, lila@horizontalwithlila.com, if you have any pressing questions about sleeping over. This episode was edited by Chad Michael Snavely. His podcast roster is on chadmichael.com. The intro music was created by Alan Markley, on Instagram as Plastic Cannons, and the cover art was designed by Shauna Shea, who can be commissioned through 99 Designs. Until next week, may you have someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. Thank you for getting horizontal with us. Oh, patriotic underwear.
What?
You weren't kidding. This is great.
I should have known. There's sometimes you think about what boxes should I wear?
Yeah.
Is there any chance of my boxes being shown? I didn't consider that today.